in the floral industry, really we rally around two big key holidays, Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. And we really do, kind of tying into the football analogy that Corey presented earlier, it is our Super Bowl moment. It's a huge indicator of the success for a company in the floral industry. And so what I wanted to talk about here today is how we've been able to leverage Castora to really evolve our whole relationship marketing program to really kick ass during Mother's Day this past year. So first of all, a little bit about the Bouqs for those that don't know. So the floral industry is about a $14 billion industry. And what you find is 80 to 85% of people that buy flowers, they're last-minute shoppers. They buy flowers for the same day or next day type of deliveries. And the big challenge that we have being small is that the bigger players have these massive operations with distribution centers where they can meet all of that demand in that space. So with the Bouqs, what we really have to rally around and really put in the market is taking time out to create really nice curated collections that at least we think are higher value and perceived as being better quality than our competitors. And we try to translate that into every touch point with the customer, whether it's email, it's on-site, whether it's through a video that we're surfacing on Instagram or Facebook. So that's really what we try to rally around to differentiate ourselves from the big behemoth competitors that we have in the space. So just a quick stat with in the floral industry, about 25% of all purchases are made during Mother's Day, and it really is an interesting holiday in that the intent is there. Valentine's Day is our other big holiday, but with Valentine's Day, with some wives and girlfriends, they may or may not prefer flowers, but all moms love flowers. So again, that's why we try to rally around this holiday. Okay. So here are some of our key goals, and these are pretty self-explanatory, but what I would say is kind of what's interesting when our organization approaches really rallying around this key moment. It's funny, we have these daily meetings, and if any of you guys are football fans and maybe familiar with the NFL draft process, they call these meetings, they call it a war room, where you'll have the GM, you'll have the head coach, you'll have scouts, you have other personnel where they're constantly going back and forth talking about data and analysis about potential picks, and then ultimately they're making their picks. And it's kind of similar in that in our scenario, we have daily forecasts, and so we have meetings 2 to 3 times a day where we're looking at how we're tracking a daily forecast, and it's imperative to stay in line because from a supply chain perspective, we need to make sure we have enough supply to ship out to customers, and from a sales perspective, we don't want to fall short because that is terrible for our relationships with the growers of the flowers. We're a direct-to-consumer organization at this point where we ship flowers directly from the flower growers to consumers. So if we happen to fall short of our expectations, that creates just bad relationships with those growers. And so it's crucial that we're all aligned and in sync during this process. And so the way that CRM and retention was historically perceived was, if we happen to be behind forecasts, they would come to our department and just say, guys, send out a mass email with 40% off promotions to the entire audience. They purely looked at us as a lever to generate sales, and kind of what we, partnering with Castora, the mind shift that we started to be able to put in place is outside of just throwing out deals and coupons and offers, there's ways that you can become more targeted and personalized with your customer base to also accelerate orders. It's been a process. We're still not all the way there, but through the examples that I'm going to show, we did make a lot of progress with this last holiday here. Okay, so before I kind of get into it, to give you kind of a pre-Castora look and a post-Castora look, historically, we only really had segmentation for our marketing campaigns. With VIPs, we really didn't have a solid definition. We looked at historical spend, but it wasn't really any type of predictive type of data point. It was just kind of looking at over the past year what people had spent. And so there was some campaigning around that. And then also for past Mother's Day purchasers, we did have some campaigns and some personalization around that to kind of speak to who were past Mother's Day buyers. But really, if you look into 2018, I mean, we really evolved a ton where we now have a VIP a strategy where it's forward-looking, it's predictive. We still target past Mother's Day purchasers, but big things for us, we saw big wins with differentiating gender types of treatments, flower preferences, discount shoppers, and then people with different price point preferences. We saw some interesting findings there that we'll go through in a second here. Okay, so first off with us, I'll admit there wasn't a lot of science into determining who we defined as a VIP. We kind of just leveraged these value tiers that Castora provides to us. And kind of what we said, we took the top 25% of people that were in the top 4 value tiers in terms of future LTV, and we kind of said, you know what, with these guys, these are our higher spenders, they have higher AOVs. Let's think about how we can not only treat them differently with different messaging, but then how can we also leverage this audience for other purposes as well to grow and evolve the program here. You kind of classically hear about the 80-20 rule where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers, and it almost falls in line here with our customer base as well. So we figured we might as well try to leverage this cohort to its max to really evolve and help us out for Mother's Day here. So from an email perspective, something that's kind of interesting we did is with the VIPs, we kind of staggered and tried to create the perception that they were getting earlier access to our Mother's Day flowers and our Mother's Day collection. So kind of what you're looking at 4 weeks out before the holiday, we started to promote to our VIPs versus the rest of our audience. We started it a week later with when we first had our intro to Mother's Day types of campaigns. And then 3 weeks out with VIPs, we kind of varied up our treatments where we actually introduced our new collection to them before the remainder of our audience. And then we also looked at this audience to promote our refer a friend and subscription programs, and we tried to lean into Mother's Day as a reason to try to generate referrals and try to sign up for one of our various subscription products. And then kind of what you're seeing in the creative, an interesting little kind of added benefit we added for the VIPs is a partner of ours called Movable Ink. They have a feature where you can click a button to add a key event to your calendar. So we kind of surfaced that within the email so that people could get reminders about when Mother's Day actually was to kind of keep it flagged for to make a purchase later on as well. Okay, so outside of email, this has been touched on earlier, but there's various ways to leverage this audience. And so a couple of other things we did is we sent everybody we send email. You'll kind of find in the flow industry everybody is sending emails every day. But what we did typically in our organization, we dedicate paid media spend for new customer acquisition purposes. But in this scenario, because it was Mother's Day and also because we were able to surface the higher LTV values of this cohort, we were able to run some tests with Facebook and direct mail where, not sure if it's exactly clear in the slides, but we had some personalization on the direct mail side where we called out their first name and said, thank you for sticking with us to try to recognize that they were loyal. And then in the Facebook ad, we had similar types of personalization there as well. And we actually saw great success. We had kind of a structured test versus holdout for each of these campaigns and saw some good incrementals, even with these Facebook and postcards and whatnot. And then just some other use cases as well. Trustpilot is a ratings and review system that we constantly try to keep high ratings that we can surface in other touch points on our website or within our emails. And so we kind of also leverage this VIP audience to solicit ratings, kind of making the assumption that they were more satisfied and would say better things about the Bouqs. And so we saw some success there. And then with Zendesk, so Zendesk is our help desk ticketing system. And so kind of another thing we did is for this defined cohort, we had different types of scripts and potential offers that we could surface for them in the event that they had a late delivery or a delivery that wasn't as high of quality. Kind of an interesting story there. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, we were on Shark Tank about 4 or 5 years ago. We actually didn't get a deal, but later got an investment when Robert had us source flowers for his wedding. And what's kind of funny is Barbara Corcoran, it was kind of flagged that a delivery that she had was at risk. And because we had her on our VIP list, I don't know all the details, but we made some arrangements where we basically got FedEx on the line like that minute and made sure her flowers were delivered on time. So kind of a funny anecdote there. And just on that topic, just one more side note too, it's interesting because we're so small, after the holiday, they have all employees answer help desk tickets. And it's amazing. People that, so more so for Valentine's Day, people that have late deliveries or low quality flowers, they'll actually like blame us for their marriages or relationships breaking up and stuff. To me, it's kind of funny. Obviously not funny for us because we're losing potential business, but kind of interesting now. Cool. Okay, so just a few creative examples. So here, as far as creative variation, this is kind of outlining how we spoke differently to men versus women. I mean, I know for a lot of the big companies here, you would think this should just be standard, but for us, this is actually a huge win because we didn't have this in place before. One other call out here is for the non-peak season, this is actually helping us out immensely. So understanding recipients that people send flowers to. Because, during Mother's Day, it's pretty straightforward. You're sending for your mom. But during non-peak seasons, we have personas that kind of give us an indication of what types of recipients people send flowers to. And now we're starting to personalize ongoing emails, Facebook ads, and other creatives to speak to that during non-peak, which we're seeing a lot of effectiveness right now as well. Okay, here, so offer variations. So during this process, the whole name of the game is how can we generate the most sales without giving away the most margin? And typically 4, 3, 2 weeks out, what we found is that you have to surface some type of offer to show that your customer is getting some type of deal. Once you get into the week of the event, we typically don't surface any offers because at that point, people are so high intent, they need to, they need to buy. So we haven't found that we've had to surface offers at that point. But with this example, though, what we found is with people that have bought through our partnership and affiliate channels, and with this specific cohort, we've had to still surface kind of higher offers. To kind of walk you through an experience, one thing we did with Fandango is we had a partnership where as people bought tickets for Black Panther, we would surface an offer that would promote $40 off a bouquet with an $18 shipping charge. So it makes it's great for scaling and generating new customer acquisition. I think it amounted to about 25% of our total sales through this channel, but it extremely makes it challenging to get them to repeat buy without discounting. So we kind of found with this cohort, we still had to kind of simulate those offers, but what we do to make up on the margin side is we charge extra for shipping. We take them through a specific offer funnel. So we kind of found that approach has been effective to reach and get this specific cohort to repeat buy. Okay, so kind of on the price sensitivity theme, on the flip side, what's kind of interesting with this use case is that anecdotally what you hear from our merchandising team and from our customers is with the way that we sell our bouquets, we have 3 sizes, an original, a deluxe, and a grand size. Basically, an original size is 12 stems, a deluxe size is 36, and so on and so forth. And typically what we hear is our deluxe size is the best to align with our vases that we sell. But what's interesting with this test is we had a defined cohort that bought our grand sizes, And what we did here is we sent them an email and kind of had a call out, basically incentivizing them to upgrade to this grand size. And then once they were able to navigate on our site and drill down to any product detail page, we kind of defaulted to the grand option. So kind of just putting in that little tweak on the site, we saw increases in AOV and conversion rates versus our control group. So, kind of taking this learning, we're trying to figure out, for this group, but then also for the deal shoppers, how can we align experiences to incentivize or to speak to their price points to drive conversions. So. Okay, flower preferences. So as opposed to Valentine's Day, where people just typically buy roses, Mother's Day, there's a little bit more of a spread. Tulips has historically been the flower of preference for Mother's Day, but here what we wanted to test was, using personas that we have in Castora for people that buy roses versus tulips, versus just a generic default. Could we see incremental increases in conversion if we kind of spoke to that? So from a creative perspective, we highlighted tulips in one version, roses in another version, and then the defaults was just kind of a mixed curated collection that we served to the remainder of our audience. And in our copy, we also kind of spoke to that as well to align to the creative. And it was interesting. We saw conversion rates were 2 times higher for the cohorts where we actually spoke to their defined preference of choice. Off-peak, it's kind of tricky because there's such a wide spread of just flower choices for our customers. But during the peak season, we saw that this was extremely impactful and effective here. And then, so we're a small, scrappy team. So as we were marketing towards our customer base leading into Mother's Day, we actually ran all of these tests kind of in isolation. And me and the guy that works with me, we had an aha moment. We said, why don't we just put all this together? Why don't we just do all of this to see what happens? And so, we personalized flower preferences. We had different offers for the deal shoppers. We had a mail version, and kind of when we tied all this together, we saw that we had the highest on-site conversion rates for all of our campaigns that we ran leading up to Mother's Day. So it kind of just speaks to, just in general, you don't necessarily have to just throw out, high offers and discounts. If you can kind of align creative messaging, on-site treatments, you can also accelerate sales as well. And then lastly here, kind of in the background during all of this, we also leveraged Castora to implement a few more lifecycle marketing triggers. And I think, I'm not sure if this was mentioned earlier, but one of the key interesting differentiators that we find is that each of the triggers are individual based. So like their churn stages, their lost customer stages, we had a lost prospect campaign we put in place. It's kind of looking at your customer and then looking at how they compare to more tenured customers. And then based off of their behaviors, it's individualizing the timing of when they fall into each of these life cycle stages. And so we've seen big wins with putting a lot of these into market. And we show a stat here about the increase in triggered revenue compared to last year. But we've also seen, since I've been at the Bouqs and now, we used to have a mix of about 70% of revenue was mass promo versus 30% being transactional and triggered. And now we're at about a 50-50 split. And so it just kind of speaks to, when you can align more targeted, relevant messaging at the right time, it's a lot more impactful than mass promos, even during a peak season like Mother's Day. So.